Happy Friday to everybody, and welcome into the Auburn Blitz podcast. Everybody should be smiling. It's Friday. Who doesn't smile on Fridays, right?
Well, you got a big weekend ahead, Brett.
Well, let me say something about that, and we got to get to our great partners here before we get started. But does anybody like cold weather?
I don't. I live in the South for a reason. If I wanted to be in the snow and in the cold, I'd go up to where you're going this weekend.
I'm telling you, okay, I know I'm going up for a monumental event, but there's no way I could live up there. I mean, and the older I get, the worse it gets, and my disdain for cold weather grows every single day. Like, I used to not think anything about, Randy knows this, Faith, about me. Fishing, I love to fish, and it doesn't matter what the weather is. I'll go out and fish. Not anymore. Like, the thought of going out there and hooking the boat up to my truck when it's 15 degrees is like, why are you stupid? You know, it's a lot better to lay in the bed where it's 70 something degrees in the house and stay under the covers. But no, let me go out here and voluntarily break ice off of this trailer hitch and hook this cold boat up to this truck. Let me go dump it in the water and go fish all day and freeze to death. Does that sound fun to anybody?
Not me. Faith, can you deal with cold weather?
I actually just got my first actual winter coat this year. And it was because I don't think I ever really wanted to say that I actually could be outside that long. But when we were in Birmingham for the Super 7, and I was wearing one of her big jackets, and I was like, Brett, I think I need to get one myself because I can't do this. I mean, it's not for me.
It was funny watching Faith when we got out in the parking lot and the cold hit. You know, Randy, there's no other cold like the cold of the Super 7. You can have the most, Chamber of Commerce month leading up to the Super 7, and you can set your watch. It's going to be bone-chilling cold that week. And
first week of December.
I thought Faith was about to get on a ski lift.
I look insulated. Like, I think I had 5 pairs of pants on and 6 tops on, and I was still freezing when we were outside.
Brett, before we get into it, what's your schedule? What all you got going on this weekend?
Leave tomorrow morning early. Get there, and the travel day, we're going to get in, and I think it's supposed to be a little bit rainy tomorrow, but we'll see how that goes. Get settled in. We got dinner somewhere tomorrow night, and then Sunday is jam-packed for us. We're going to be all over the place, so we got something to do at like 10 o'clock that morning, and then at noon we're going to meet with Senator Britt and going to get to hang out with her for a little while, and then the rally starts at 3 in the Capital One Center. We got tickets to that, so that I'm hearing that's going to be more of a party than it's going to be anything else. So we're excited about that, and then we got dinner again that night, and then Monday is obviously inauguration day, so it's going to be unique. I think it's going to be a high of 20, so that should be real fun. I think the low that night is 7, 7, like single digits. So I won't be out when it hits 7. I'm hoping to be inside somewhere. And we got dinner again at a nice place on Monday night outside, after the inauguration. And then Tuesday, God willing, the weather's okay, and we'll be headed back south where it looks like we're going to be coming right into the teeth of a winter storm down here for next week. So daggum winter, man. It can go on. I've already had enough of it. Sick of it.
Well, it's going to be fun. I'm excited for you. Interested to see how Monday works out. I bet there's going to be a epic crowd. Obama-esque crowd is what I'm guessing.
Depends on if they want to stand out in that or not.
They'll stand out. There's a lot of fools like you that are going up there, and doesn't matter what conditions it's in, they're going to be out there. I can about bet you that.
Well, it's going to be hopefully fun and historical, an opportunity to see something that you maybe don't get a chance to see but maybe once or twice in your lifetime. We're getting started here on the Auburn Blitz podcast. Again, we're glad to have Faith with us. It's our second day, and looking forward to many, many more with Faith joining our team. Real excited that Sensa Green is our partner here on the program for air that's cool and clean. Call them Sensa Green. They are the carrier dealers. Boy, those units are going to be working overtime next week when the temperature drops down here in the South as well. So you better make sure yours is working, because you don't want to be caught where it's 15, 18, 20 degrees outside and your house feels the same way inside because your unit quit. So call on Sensa Green if you've got any doubt. They've got some great deals starting 2025 on new units. Scout Program Management, also glad to have them a part of the Auburn Blitz podcast, a full-service construction management firm. So for all you education entities out there, from pre-construction through the construction process, Scout will lead you to the finish line, and they are located in Birmingham, Alabama, and we really appreciate them very, very much, along with our other partners that we'll talk about throughout the remainder of the podcast this morning. And guys, I guess we'll start with the Auburn, Georgia preview. We talked a little bit about it yesterday, but I told both of you I'm a little worried about it. I mean, a little bit more worried today as I'm getting closer to the game on Saturday than I was yesterday. And after hearing Coach Pearl talk yesterday, there's reason to be. And there's several points I want to bring out of his conference yesterday. Number one being Asa Newell. And he spoke highly of Asa Newell. Asa Newell is one of the top freshmen in the country. He's going to pose some problems inside for Auburn. And, you know, the thing that stood out to me, Faith, on that conversation was, or in that press conference, is Auburn really wanted Asa Newell. And what Bruce Pearl had to say about a lot of the guys on Georgia's roster is the players that Auburn wanted. And it's the players that Bruce Pearl wanted. And we weren't able to get them for various reasons, namely NIL. And I'll talk more about that. But thought that was interesting, Faith, right out of the gate. He talked a lot about Asa Newell.
Well, yeah, so he was saying, you know, he's one of the best freshmen in the country. And then he came back with Tahad being the best freshman in the country. And I mean, I think some of that has to do with the development process that, you know, he's had with Tahad and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, yeah, he spoke about a bunch of those guys that he wanted to have and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think as much of that kind of being what we're going into. He also talked about just kind of the depth, like Miles Kelly on the bench and everything like that.
Right.
He was like, yeah, he could get some more playing time, but we've got all these other guys, you know, and some of them are older. So I think it does kind of talk about the depth of, you know, our roster. And that's what we talked about yesterday for sure. But yeah, I mean, you want to talk about what we could have had, but we're
pretty good.
Right. We've got what we have. And I think, yeah, the closer we get to it, I definitely agree. It's a little bit more nerve-wracking kind of going into it.
For a lot of different reasons, Randy. But he talked about Asa Newell. He talked about Ja'Kai Howard and the role of our freshmen versus their freshmen. And he talked about Mike White, you know, building that roster up. But Randy, you know, the thing that got to me out of that, the comments, and he pretty much he said it about as frank as he could. And, you know, he brings this up often. He didn't make it the centerpiece of the press conference yesterday, but he said, look, we used to go in Georgia and get who we wanted because of our success and what we built. And he said, we still have good relationships, but he said, Georgia's made NIL a priority. And he said, we don't go get the best players in Georgia anymore. And he said it that frank. And, man, it's a problem. And he said Georgia's made NIL a priority. And I hate to drift back to this all the time, but it doesn't matter how good you are anymore. It doesn't matter what accolades you've done. It's the money at the end of the day, and that's why Mike White's able to win some of these recruiting battles.
Well, if you can coach them up and develop and start having success, it makes it a lot easier for you to spend that NIL dollar, and they take that. And I feel like Georgia is heading in that direction. I hope we're a little ahead of the game with where they are currently. But back to the recruiting process, Brett, and we say this all the time about Bruce Pearl. When you're in the mix for a majority of the top 50 guys in the country, you're going to go after them. Now, you're going to build better relationships with some than others, but of course we were after Newell. I mean, Bruce Pearl's after anybody he can get his hands on that's the best players in the country if we can make it work. Very thankful and listening into those comments that he had that we got the 2 freshmen that we did, and more thankful than anything that we don't necessarily depend on them to the direction that Georgia currently has to depend on those young guys. It doesn't take anything away from them, but I'd rather be senior laden with some really good players that you can count on when it gets, down to the last few minutes of the ball game. I know the crew that we're going to have in there, especially when Janai comes back, and Tahad may be a part of that, but a majority of the other guys we're going to have out there at that point are going to be seniors. And I'd rather build it that way, Brett. I think that's a championship way to build it rather than get these freshmen and they're one and done. I'm hopeful that we don't go down the path that you're going to see some of these programs. You take Duke this year. I really worry about Duke later on in the season. We've already seen them once.
Yep.
And I do think Cooper Flagg outside of Janai Broom's playing the best basketball in the country right now. But he's done. You get a flash in the pan with him and it's over. There's no amount of money you can throw at him to keep him around. He's number 1 pick in the draft. I would rather build it the way that Bruce Pearl's building it than go out there and get those guys that are one and done guys.
Well, Bruce talked about Janai Broom, and he was a mid-major guy, and he talked about, he wasn't good enough to be a D1 type player. He wasn't good enough for that. He kind of went back through and kind of bragged on Auburn's program about the development of how much better Bruce got. And after he left Morehead State, he went to Morehead State and was really, really good. And that's how Auburn found him in the portal. There's several ways to get to a destination, and go find those diamonds in a rough like that and build them. And they're going to stay around because they don't have, immediate attention coming out of high school like a Cooper Flagg. And then they come in and do what Cooper Flagg's doing, and they're gone in a year. Yeah, the optimal thing would be to find those guys and keep them around 2 or 3 years. But look, this may be unpopular for people on this show, and I think Cooper Flagg maybe is the best player in the country. And I know Janai Broom, it's a different skill set. It's a different skill set, and he's a veteran. Cooper Flagg's a freshman. But you don't score 42 points in a game. That's not normal. And, I think I'm with you. Every game that goes by for him, he's not a freshman anymore. He scares me. Duke scares me. Iowa State scares me. Of course, I think all of them are saying the same thing about Auburn. I mean, they're going, I don't want to play them in the tournament. And Janai's going to be back. At what point, we don't know. But that's why I'm a little bit nervous about this Georgia game Saturday. When you look at it, they're undefeated at home. They are well coached by Mike White. Faith, you talked about it just a minute ago, and I think it's a good point. We do have a lot of depth. And like Bruce said, Ja'Kai Howard would be playing a lot more for anybody else, but he's got Miles Kelly and Chad Baker-Mazara and other guys in front of him. And it's because of veterans. You don't get a team like Auburn's very often where you have, especially in this modern age, college basketball, where you've got this many veterans and this much depth.
Yeah, I mean, like we talked about kind of earlier, people are transferring and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, having the depth and across the board, we have kind of the depth, not just in a single spot. It's across everywhere. And I think that's something that we're able to really benefit from as a team.
Yeah, I do too. You look at we appreciate it, Jerron. Justin wants me to get a picture of the garbage truck. I'm gonna do that, Justin. I'm gonna get a picture of the garbage truck.
Are you gonna take any video and send to Justin?
I am going to take some video. Yep.
Have you talked to Justin about it yet, Brett?
No, I haven't. So
Justin, expect the phone call following this broadcast.
Yeah, we're gonna.
I'd like to see a moving visual of what goes on at this.
If the camera's not frozen, if everything functions and stuff. So
there'll be a lot of videos coming out.
All right,
Help
Silas.
Justin.
Yeah, we'll get back to that here in just a minute. Silas Demery, another really talented player for Georgia. That matchup with Denver Jones. Silas Demery, 6'6". This is not going to be, Denver's a big physical guard, and we talk about that, Randy, but Silas Demery is going to be an interesting watch and see how those two guys, and Bruce brought it up about the switching that we do. He said, we're going to have to figure that out because they're going to try to get us. And that's what teams did with Wendell. And let me go back and correct what I said yesterday. I said a last-second shot by Katie Johnson to win that game. It was Wendell Green that drove down and made that layup to win the game. This is the second time, and he brought this up too. It's the second time in 2 years Auburn's been ranked number 1 going into Georgia. How about that? So that's pretty interesting that we had to have that last-second shot to beat them last time 2 years ago. And, Wendell Green was able to make that. But you've got a situation where they're going to try to create mismatches. And got to watch that point guard position tomorrow.
Well, I've been talking more about that than anything, really, is our decision to go big at the guard position with length. And when you do need to switch, which has been a nemesis for us defensively in the past, when Jasper or Wendell Green or Aiden Holloway last year, when you switch and those guys end up on a lengthy wing like a 6'6", 6'7" guy, it's been a problem for Auburn. And they've exposed us. And these offenses and these coaches are great at getting the matchups that they're looking for. So that has not been the case this year, but Georgia's gone big too. And they've got the same blueprint that Auburn's got. But when we switch right now, I mean, we switch to CBM or Miles Kelly, who's 6'5", 6'6", with a lot of length, great aggression out at the point. I don't know, Brett, if you saw this, but Ja'Kai Howard on the perimeter defending this previous game was excellent. He's improving tremendously.
Every game.
If he doesn't, he's not going to get the minutes that we all know that he deserves from the athleticism standpoint that he brings to the court. But his length and his aggression up top is going to help. And I can't say enough good things about Tahad. His own ball defense is second to none right now for freshmen. When he's on you, you got to be. I mean, he is pressuring you from midcourt to wherever you're moving. He's that good an athlete, and he's been that well coached, not only in college, but back to his high school days.
And just think, he comes off the bench, guys. He doesn't even start. And Bruce said that. He said he is, without a doubt, the best freshman coming off the bench. And, I mean, he may be the best freshman in the country, period, but he doesn't even start for Auburn. That tells you everything about this team and how deep this team is, Randy, and how and I want to ask Faith a question here in just a minute, but I want to finish up with your analysis there on the guard position. I think that's really what sets Auburn apart, finally, for a change, than some of these other teams, is that we have the advantage. Not saying that, and I'm like you, I'm not dissing on the guys we've had in the past. We've had some really good guards that have all been diminutive. They've all been smaller, and they've had, when you faced bigger teams, more physical teams, we suffered a little bit. And Bruce was able to find ways to fight through that and win a majority of those games. But now we don't have that disadvantage anymore.
Even with KD and his effort. I mean, we used to sit on here and really brag on Zep Jasper's on-ball defense. I mean, he was outstanding there, but he's just small. And Denver Jones now is one of the top defenders in the country. Chaney Johnson being another, along with Dylan Cardwell. If you go on the road, you may not be knocking down your shots from the perimeter, and it's going to happen to Auburn soon. I mean, we're going to have one of those games where you're going to look like a Tennessee going into Florida, where for whatever reason, there's a cap on that bucket and you can't get anything to go down. Can you win games like that? And Auburn has proven that we can win games being brutally good on the defensive end, holding teams to 23 points and a half, and finding ways to get the ball down in the post. And we've been shooting it extremely well from the perimeter. And Brett, that's a stat to pull up. I mean, I would guess that we're 7 to 8 percentage points higher at the free throw line this year. And I would guess we're anywhere from 5 to 7 percentage points higher shooting the three. I think we were down around the 32, 33% range last year, and we're up around the 37, 38%. And that may not sound like a lot, but that's an awful lot when you're putting up as many shots as we are. And it's been a big difference. But I think the biggest difference for Auburn is how well we defend on the perimeter. And if we keep that up, we're going to be a tough out.
Oh yeah, adds up. All those little things add up. All right, I think Brian Matthews asked a question yesterday, Faith, in the press conference. I'm 90% sure it was him, about Chad Baker Mazara. You've had a chance to be around CBM and had classes with him, and I want to know what kind of person he seems like. A great, fun-loving guy, but on the court, like Bruce talked about it extensively. The scouting report is to grab him and to hit him and to get him out of his game. And it works.
Fired up.
And it works a lot of times. But they tried to do it. Mississippi State tried to do it, and he refrained. Matthews tried to get in his head, and the one play in the corner where he threw the ball off of him, and they tried to start jawing, and you could see that there was a part of CBM that wanted to buy into that the rest of the game, and they were still talking a little bit. But Ira Bowman, I saw, grabbed him and took him to the side, and some of the players were still talking to Chad Baker, saying, "Don't get caught in this." And so he's done a better job this year. I know last year the Yale game, that was a bad situation, and it really kind of threw us out of our mental when we lost him in that game and early. But that was Yale's strategy, and so it's like Bruce said, he knows that people are going to do that, and he's learned to fight through some of that garbage. But tell us, Faith, about CBM, the person, because all we get to see is the competitor, and we know the competitor is a lot different most of the time than the person.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to have him on. I had Spanish class. So, excuse me. So when I was in school and I minored in Spanish. And so I took cultural analysis with Chad, and I'm sure everybody knows, but he's fluent in Spanish.
Yeah.
So he was just one of like the funniest people, just like how you see him on the court when he's in class. He'll kind of give you some of those. And I mean, we sat next to each other in the back, and he would sit there and say something, and I'd be like, I don't want to start laughing because I don't want to get in trouble because I need as much help in this class as I need. But he's so funny, and he really does, like, last year, I would say he was kind of really starting to understand Auburn and kind of the Auburn community and family, just because he hadn't really been here that often. And he found his, like, I feel like he found his spot on campus. You know what I mean? Not so much of that popularity kind of thing, but I feel like he really is able to connect with any person. Like him and I, the first day of class when we had to do our introduction or whatever, and he just turned and was like, "You want to be partners?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's fine." And then even throughout the class, when our teacher would assign partners or whatever, you could just see that he's one of the most outgoing, but also just such a kind, gentle heart. And I think he's very emotional and everything. And so
That's it. Yeah.
on the court, like Bruce was saying, the maturity level has gone up with him. And I don't think it's that he was ever immature, but I think when the game is so emotional and it means so much that, I mean, you're gonna lash out and you're gonna make these kind of things when you're only thinking about yourself in the moment. And I think he has that kind of social awareness now of kind of what's going on. And I just think it speaks volumes about him and how people want to get underneath the skin. That's how good of a player you are. People are going to want to make you do something so that you're out for the rest of the game because you're that good and they know that the team needs you.
Yeah, you just nailed it. I think that's almost what Bruce said, Randy.
It's a compliment.
He's the best player on. He may be, outside of Janai, the best player on the number one team in the country. And so, yeah, you're going to get shots. But I'm glad to hear that, Faith, because sometimes players, their personality on the court can be who people shape them as a person. And
Right.
people think, well, man, he's a hothead and, he's out of control and it's all about that. And, I've seen another side of that too. I think when he was doing a little show with Dylan, Dylan does that around the show.
Mhm.
Dylan's fun loving and got a great personality. And they were kind of walking through the village out there where all the students were camped out. And man, he just seemed to have a wonderful personality and a guy that you want to hang out with. And I think Faith brought up a good point, Randy. We forget sometimes that he comes from a different country and different culture, and that's a shock to a lot of people. I mean, you take us and you move us to the Dominican Republic, we're the outsider trying to fit in, and trying to do and be productive in our trade, and then trying to fit in culturally and all that. And we lose that sometimes.
And also, I was able to interview him for a different class or whatever, and, so I was kind of able to dive in a little bit about what it's like being, now in Auburn, Alabama from the DR, and he told me he's a very family person. He loves his family. He, is really close with all of them. Imagine how hard it is not being able to just drive home or something like that. I know I wouldn't be able to do that, but you know, it's a his parents didn't even speak English, and he moved over here, I want to say in like 10th grade, to go live with his uncle or his aunt or something like that, and to start school. And he barely spoke a lick of English when he moved over here. And so that kind of adjustment too is, I mean, I can't imagine. He's good at English now. So I mean, you're able to have a conversation with him, but I mean, it's still just such a different, I feel like, culture shock kind of.
He's handled it well.
He
And
has.
the great personalities and the great athletes seem to embrace that better than others. I'm a big US soccer fan, that, Brett. And I watch what's going on in Italy right now with Christian Pulisic.
Right.
And his ability to embrace the Italian language and go on an interview and communicate with them, not only in English, and them having to have an interpreter to pass along everything. I mean, think about it. It makes you embrace him more because he's making the effort to embrace your culture. And so you do have to take a step back and think that not everybody grew up in Alabama that's at our universities, and they're from different parts. But I also think that it's really important to do what you're doing, Faith, and personalize those people, because people want to know, they're not kids, but they want to know the young men and the young women in our programs that they're cheering for, and want to know more about them. And that's been the biggest complaint about Major League Baseball over the years, on how poor they've marketed that product, is they haven't personalized their athletes enough. And it's hurt the ratings for Major League Baseball. It doesn't hurt the attendance. I mean, they got so many games, you're going to make money in that sport, just based off of the number of games and in certain regions of the country. But y'all get what I'm saying. I mean, you've got to find interesting ways to market your product and your players. And thank the Lord we've got Bruce Pearl, because he's the best at it.
Yeah, you want to be able to know, kind of what they stand for, especially, the basketball team, how involved they are in the fan base and all that kind of stuff. When they're walking around talking to students that are waiting out in line and all that kind of stuff. You want to know what those kind of people, who you're cheering for. And I think too, kind of when I said that he found his spot on campus, now I don't mean he is like, I'm Chad Baker Mazzara, I am, this, and this. When I was in class with him, he literally just thought of himself as a normal student that was going to have to miss class sometimes because he was on the road. And I think that is one of the coolest things that, when athletes don't idolize themselves almost. And, he's good. He knows he's good, but he's not sitting there like, well, I have to do this, and this because I'm the best or whatever. And so I thought that was really cool, him taking, the time out of his day to do stuff for me, for my other classes, not even Spanish class, to do a simple interview, but just also get to know me as a friend and all that.
Yeah. Not have an elitist kind of attitude or whatever.
Right.
And I'll say this, and we'll move on. I think this is a testament to Bruce Pearl too, and knowing how to manage his roster. You know, coaches a lot of times it's not just about the play calling and the coaching on the floor and the practice. It's about how you manage all the personalities on a roster. I mean, Randy, you and I talked about it. You identified the Ja'Kai Howard issue before I heard anybody else say anything about it. You brought it up to us on this show, and you said, look, I'm not trying to point out anything, but you know, and then all of a sudden you started seeing these video clips of Ja'Kai Howard all over Twitter and X. I guess you call it X now. I'm still going to call it Twitter forever, but X. And you said, I told you that's what I got enamored. I couldn't take my eyes off of him. The body language and the attitude was so bad. Well, look how far he's come in just a few weeks. They had the plane incident with Ja'Kai and Jaheim. Look at them now. I mean, it's about that could have been a crucial moment of where the team fell apart before we really ever got started. And Bruce Pearl and these coaches know how to take every one of these players, and not just on this team, but all the teams in the past, and play to their strengths and build them up and know when to kick the ones in the rear end that need to be kicked and the ones that need to have an arm put around them. And you and I talk about that all the time, Randy. You have to handle different people. You have to handle people differently in different situations. Some need that get in their face, get after them, and others, if you do that, they shut down and they get removed. So, man, they probably don't get as much credit as they deserve of being able to manage multiple personalities on a team of egos where you got a bunch of great players that want a lot of playing time. And this is the most unselfish bunch I think I've ever seen.
Well, some leaders, here's one thought though. You know, you're picking the guys that you're working with. You know, I've watched Gino Auriemma and other coaches talk about what do they look for when they go and recruit a kid. Well, I know that if Bruce Pearl goes and recruits a kid, they better be passionate, hardworking, physical. There are just certain elements to the way that he coaches the game that if they don't have that in their DNA, it's not going to work out with him. So the point I'm making is CBM may be the epitome of what I would think Bruce Pearl would look for. Yes, he's got to reel in the emotions, but the emotions are there, and the emotions, when they're reeled in the right way, are a big time benefit, or a major benefit for the entire team. So as a leader, you got to pick people to be around you that you're not always impacting each other in a negative way. So I think that Bruce Pearl has done an amazing job of putting a culture together that can help these kids develop into the players that they can be. But he has picked the right ones. Even you go back to KD. I mean, KD and Bruce probably dealt with one another as good as you can deal with KD and somebody that emotional. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
I mean, they had some great moments together. And I feel the same about CBM, and I'll say it for the third time here in this show. We're just lucky we've got Bruce Pearl. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. We're also lucky that we have Bunkers as part of our program because Bunkers is awesome. And if you haven't been to Bunkers in downtown Auburn on West Glen, you're missing out. Great food, a great bar atmosphere. That bar blew me away. And I know we talk about it every day, but it is probably one of the best looking bars that you'll find anywhere. And then especially in Auburn, then go in and rent one of the simulation bays, and you can hang out with your friends and have a few drinks, have some great food, hang out as long as you want to. It's just a unique environment, and Auburn Athletics, they take their recruits there. That's how much they think of Bunkers. When they're coming and they're bringing recruits in to Auburn, they end up at Bunkers at some point in time. So that should tell you everything you should know, right, Randy?
It should. It is a spot that if you just riding by, you won't know how nice it is until you walk through the doors, and I think you'll walk back a lot. If you go in there, make sure to go in hungry. A lot of food will come out on the plate, so I can't say enough of good things about that spot and the ease of parking. I know that that's important to a lot of people that are trying to get in downtown Auburn. Where the heck am I going to park? park, and how easy is it going to be to get in and get out? And Bunkers makes that extremely easy. I'm about to step aside, Brett, but I've got a day full ahead here on a Friday, and we can't thank all of you enough from Lee Apparel and Sign Source for working with us as we head into 2025. Heading over to Auburn for a majority of my day-to-day to finish up a new building that we'll have opening on Opelika Road. It's right up from the mall, right next door to Laredo's, if you know that landmark. There's an ABS sign up there currently that we'll be taking down. Won't do any production out of there, but we'll be taking orders and delivering those orders back to you. So Sign Source and Lee Apparel, 256-825-0197. And one thing that we do have a lot going on with, and I get a lot more questions than anything this time of year, especially based around your wonderful sport of fishing, Brett. Do y'all do vehicles wraps? Yes, we do lots and lots of vehicle and boat wraps. So if you need one designed to print production on the vinyl to installation, we can do it from start to finish. 256-825-0197.
Randy, appreciate it, buddy.
Thank y'all. Y'all have a great day. Faith, keep him in line. Don't let him say anything negative, and let's send him out as a happy man as he heads over to Trumpville in the inauguration in Washington, D.C.
Bye, Randy.
We'll keep rolling on. Our Stu says always go hungry to a restaurant, but never when grocery shopping. Very good advice. Hey, our Stu, since I've got you on right now, and I know it, you won one of the hats last week. One of the Auburn Blitz hats right here. Let me get it real quick so you can see it. I need you to message me on Facebook. So go find me if you got that, or figure out a way that I can get that to you and AU Tiger Blogging. So yeah, our Stu's, you won the hat when we got to 500 subscribers, and we are rocketing towards 600 very quickly. And I'm telling you, keep spreading the word out there, everybody. We appreciate it. We try to do it a little bit different than everybody else. There's a lot of podcasts out there that you can pick from. We know that. So, but we try to hit a few angles and some things that everybody, it's not the same cookie cutter stuff. And that's why we're glad to have Faith in here, because she can give you insight into some of these players, because she was in class with them and she got to see them outside of their, environment that we all see them in. It's playing their particular sport. Speaking of staying with basketball, not a good night for Auburn's women last night. Again, they lose to Texas 74-57. They're 0-5 in league play, Faith. The hole continues to get deeper for them, and this is not what Coach Harris wanted.
No. I mean, if you go and you look at the stats, they're just getting beat. They're getting beat on, the rebounds, the points, everything. So it's just, you can't win a basketball.
Well, they've got
game.
one player right now, Faith, that's scoring. Deanna Gaston's scoring 20-something points a game, and she had 18 last night, and I know Bostic had 18, but when you look down and you have a roster and you got one player in double digits scoring, it's not going to work out real well for you. And obviously the SEC is a meat grinder of a conference, so it's not going to get any easier. I'm telling you. We'll see how it all plays out. Justin wants to know how the girl from China did. I think she played 6 minutes, and I don't think she scored, to my knowledge. So probably trying to get her acclimated and getting her into the flow. And she was part of the Chinese national team. Unique name here, Ronnie Pilsap. That's pretty interesting. Is C.D. Morgan transferring to Auburn High? Not that I know of, and I surely hope not. For Benjamin Russell's sake. I think Sedarian really likes Alexander City and Benjamin Russell and his teammates here, and we'll see. That I know Jamichael Garrett is a relative of his. He just transferred from Gulf Shores to Auburn High. And look, I'm not going to say anything about anybody. I'm not going to ever say no for sure on anything anymore in this world, Faith. Kids move all over the place, and they move, wherever situations dictate. So hopefully not. Hopefully Sedarian will stay right where he is at Benjamin Russell, because I think we're going to have a good team next year in Alex City, and about to hire a new coach. Should be announced here in the next week. So should be a lot of exciting news around Benjamin Russell football as well. But going back to, the Auburn women, Faith, and what Coach Harris has done, they got better each of the last couple of years. And so this has got to be a disappointment for her more than anybody, because she recruited really well. And we got some really talented freshmen like Soraya Daniels and some of those girls that came in from really good high school programs. But they do return home against Missouri. Missouri's only 11-9. We're 9-9. And then we got to go on the road to Mississippi State. And then you return back home for Florida coming in at 11-8. So we got a couple winnable games at home coming up. They better figure out a way to get wins on those.
Yeah, I mean, I think hopefully they're not in a rut of this kind of streak that they're on. So, I mean, putting that kind of behind them, coming back home, kind of getting, everyone involved back at home, I feel like that could be a big, change for them, and a big change in confidence for the team.
Yeah, you're approaching the mid part of the SEC schedule. You need to get a couple of wins to see if you can kind of get things turned around and going in the right direction. Jeff said, any word on game day in Auburn for Tennessee? Now, I haven't heard anything. Jeff, would not be surprised if they're not there. I mean, that's definitely, if Auburn, especially if Auburn is still number one, if Auburn can navigate the next couple games and get to that 25th game against Tennessee, I would not be surprised if ESPN game day is not in Auburn again. Now, last time game day showed up, it wasn't good. We lost to Kentucky, and Kentucky's a good team, but they weren't a great team, and we had just come off an emotional win against South Carolina, being the best team in the league, and we beat them by 40. So I had to turn around, and you had all the I'm not going to say that all that's distraction, because I think Bruce Pearl does a good job, Faith, of keeping the team, insulated from all that stuff and focused. But it's hard not to get distracted a little bit when you got game day there and all the students outside and all the hype and and you just knocked off the number one team in the league at that time. It's hard not to, as a kid, to just say, okay, yeah, it's pretty big, and maybe lose a little bit of focus. But again, you want ESPN showing up to your place. You want game day showing up. That means you're relevant and that your program's relevant, and you're probably the best team in the country, and Auburn is right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it says a lot about the team, and I don't think I've noticed too much about any egos or anything like that kind of getting in the way of the team. Hopefully, they just have confidence, and not arrogance, but confidence going into it. And I mean, I can't imagine being my age and having a line around, the arena to watch me play basketball. Like I couldn't imagine that. So, I mean, I think everything's being handled well for them. And I know my roommates were talking about going to the game, and they were like, I don't want to camp out. I don't want to have to wait. I was like, I don't blame y'all.
No, I don't blame me at all. Like, some people got to go to class, right?
Some people do.
Some people have to go to class.
I'm wondering if I still have student tickets.
Well, you might want to check on that.
I know.
That might be something. Hey, look, you look down, and student tickets get loaded on your ID, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why not?
I know.
I mean, you need to check on that. So, all right. So you need to look at a standpoint of, again, the women, if they can get things turned around, you want them to kind of get a little bit of momentum, because, look, I think we all want to be good in every sport. And that's what we've been bragging on about Auburn the last, couple of years. If Auburn football can get things turned around on the field, every other program, the direction is in the right direction. It's going in the right direction. Maybe a little bit of a step back here for Auburn women, but nevertheless, maybe they'll get that turned around. Before we get off, Faith, this morning, I did bring up the Title IX issue, and we knew this was coming. And it's, centers around all of this portal and NIL stuff that we've been talking ad nauseum about for feels like forever. I get sick of talking about it. That's all we talk about. But they're making a petition to the Department of Education saying, look, that's a payment to a player. It should apply to Title IX. It should be equitable across the board. So I don't know how this thing is going, where it's going to go from here. I'm sure it'll get caught up in the court system like everything else. But I want to read just a quick thing, an excerpt from this release yesterday. It said the plans that many major college athletic departments are making for how they will distribute new direct payments to their athletes. So really it centers around the athletic departments making direct payments to these players and these student athletes. They say if you do that, it violates Title IX, according to the memo the U.S. Department of Education put out yesterday. They went on to say, in some cases, athletic directors have publicly shared that they intend to provide upward of 75% of the money to the football players or to mostly football and men's basketball players. Said the NCAA and its powerhouse or power conferences have agreed to allow each school to share up to $20.5 million in direct payments into its athletes via name, image, and likeness deals as one of the terms of a pending antitrust settlement. Many schools from those power conferences have developed plans to distribute majority of that money to the two programs I just said, football and men's basketball. So they're stepping in. So now how do they get around that law and how do they reshape that law? Because if they do it privatized, if you go out and do it from a private entity, now you don't have that law in place, and they can't really say anything about that. So, and by the way, not to just cut my own self off, Matt said game day just announced it will be there for Tennessee on the 25th. So there you go, Jeff and R. Stews and all of you that were asking. Game day will be there on the 25th in Auburn. So didn't have to wait to see if Auburn stayed number one. But I want to go back to that on Title IX. Faith, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Also, kind of just explaining it a little bit more, the equal distribution between the men and the women. Because like you said, it's majority of it is going to football and basketball. Now, the part that I kind of, when I was reading this last night, had to sit there and kind of think on. So when I was in my mass media law class and we were talking about, how schools or how streaming things, how is everyone making money? Well, if you're looking at your football and your basketball teams, are those the money makers of your school?
Most
is that
are.
what is
Yep,
attracting people?
Yep.
It makes sense to me thinking that majority of that is going to go to your men's basketball and football, because that's what's bringing in.
That's the revenue generator.
Right. So, I mean, but I think there has to be some sort of, like we talked about yesterday, regulation with NIL and all that kind of stuff, but also a regulation between, does it go, or maybe not regulation, but a conversation of, does it go everywhere? If there's,
well, let me ask you personally, you're a girl, obviously, and this is Title IX was put in to protect and make everything equitable. And I think it's great. I've got a daughter. Again, it's bad that you have to have laws to put in place to make things, but you just have to have that in society. We know that. What's your honest feel on that? I mean, you're saying that the revenue, coming in from football and basketball generates the eyeballs, it brings people in, but in the same light, you want to see equity across the board because that's the way things should be. But I think you understand too that it's not equitable in revenue, and unfortunately, everything's not equal out here in society, and more people are going to show up to a men's basketball game than they are women's at Auburn. Maybe not the case at UConn or wherever, and I know both of their programs are good. Maybe that's not a good example. But what I'm saying is I think you understand the reality of why they say, well, they deserve more of the pie, not because it's female male, it's because they bring more in, and that's what's generating the attention.
And that's the thing that I think it can be misconstrued in a lot of different ways, is that it's not man versus woman. It's not female versus male. That's not it. No one's thinking about, well, oh, it's women's, oh, it's this. It's how are we going to make the most money? And well, if one school is going to set it even across the board, there's going to be other schools that aren't. And guess what? They're going to be dominating your program.
Bingo.
And I mean, again, as a woman, I feel like I get to say it, that if you look at the numbers and you look at money's everything these days. That's the only thing that everybody cares about.
Unfortunately.
If women's sports aren't making the money, then you don't need to be getting an equal layout.
Hey, it's almost like the bowl. Look, we could take it another way, Faith. It's like the conference splitting all of the revenue in the postseason equitable across the board, when maybe Georgia. Look, I'm gonna be honest with you. Does Auburn deserve an equal share of what Georgia got in the playoff? No, because we didn't make it. And what about Vanderbilt sitting down there mooching off everybody forever, having to split bowl revenue when they never even went to the daggum bowls? Now, I know they're a little bit better now, but it's the same deal. You're basically saying, hey, we're going to prop you up down here. You're not pulling your weight. You're not giving the same deal. And it may be, I know some people watching may go, well, that's not the case, but it really is the case. It's about and it's unfortunate but it's just the way of the world. It's just ratings. It's just people gravitate toward football and men's basketball as 1A and 1B in the college world, and all the other sports are down the line. And we can rank them however we want to rank them, but that's the reality of it.
And the thing is, too, is do you think we got the girl from China for free? Do you think from the national team over there that she was playing basketball for, do you think she just came to Auburn for free?
No.
They definitely paid her for it. And don't get me wrong. I do, like what we talked about yesterday, I do think there needs to be a regulation on how much we're paying people. I agree. I think those big dollar signs, that's insane. But and some people might, and to argue with myself, well, if the women aren't getting, enough money, they're not going to be able to, go and recruit those people because they're going to think they're worth like so much more money like the men are. So of course they're not going to be as good. I don't think any woman, any athlete setting is sitting there thinking, well, I'm going to get offered more from another school. Because that's just not the reality of it.
Basically, what it's saying, the whole gist of Title IX is to make sure, and I'm going to put this in about as simplistic terms as I can, that you're not putting the men's basketball team in the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, and you're putting the girls' basketball team in the Super 8. It's okay. You're going on the road. Accommodations should be equitable. Facilities should be equitable. Scholarships should be equitable. Things that the school provide. That's why they're bringing this up. If the school is directly paying revenue to players, they're saying, okay, if you're doing that, then it applies to Title IX, and it's got to be spread across the board. That's why I think you're going to see football, namely football. I don't know how they're going to handle men's basketball, but namely football split away, and they're going to be looked at as something separate. Because it does generate billions of dollars in this country, and the revenue share is going to be separated. And then now you're going to put everybody else in the pot because there is no women's football. See, when I worked at a college, your your sports had to be equitable. If you had men's tennis, you had to have women's tennis or another women's sport to kind of balance the numbers out. It had nothing to do with, of course, we weren't paying players, but it wasn't really about the money. It was about equity across the board, what the school provided. So you don't have a women's football program. So it would be easy to take that and move that out and then say, okay, everything else splits in school revenue.
I mean, yeah, like we actually, when we were doing On the Road, we were talking about flag football.
Right.
And if that's going to get brought into the college scene, maybe that's going to be the counter to
It could be.
Football or whatever. But I think football is already its own thing. And if you don't think that at this point, you're crazy. You're crazy
Your
because
head's in the sand. Yep.
yeah, I mean, football is just becoming an absolute, like, that's everyone's college football is always and always will be, just a whole different thing. But now with all the money and everything, it has become I don't want to say disaster, but.
Well, they've lost their own focus. Now they've got to reel that in. And what they're going to do is they're going to get around this. They're going to say, okay, the school can't directly issue out that payment. It's going to have to be put through a collective and then or something of somehow. And then they'll legalize it and they'll go through the legal system and it'll go through the courts and they'll separate it and they'll get around it. That's just how this is going to be. I mean, we already know it's going to get tied up.
Well, yeah, that was the last, like one of the last paragraphs of the article that you sent me about how, people are going to be going around it and knowing that they're going to violate it.
So I will say this, the Title IX deserves its place. And I think like female athletes like Riley Gaines out there fighting against transgender in the sport, I applaud her 1,000% because the thought, and I'll never agree with it. If you're watching this program and you don't like what I'm about to say, then so be it. You don't have to watch it anymore. But there's no place for a biological male in a female locker room, period. You can come out with whatever fallacy you want to come up with. You can create some other gender and you can act like it's it's real, whatever you want to do in your own mind. But I'm just telling you, it's wrong. I cannot believe it's even a discussion. It's unbelievable to me. And, more power to Riley Gaines. And she has been a stalwart out there supporting women. So that's what Title IX is about. That's what the gist of Title IX, protect female athletes and make sure they have the same rights as male athletes and they have equal opportunities. And now we're bringing the money thing in because of the split and all, but that's really the gist of why Title IX was developed a long time ago.
Right. And I mean, it makes sense. You don't want to be put in a shoebox when, the guys are in the suite or whatever.
Right.
Which makes sense. But now that the money is really becoming involved in all of that, it's big picture. I feel like you have to think about the money.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's where it's all going to end. And, it all comes back to the mighty dollar, Faith. So, well, we're up against the end of the show again. It was a great show. We appreciate everybody that commented and tuned in. And we know a lot of you catch us later in the day and at other times you might not be able to see us live. Again, we do want to thank Sense of Green for air that's cool and clean. Call them Sense of Green. They are the leading carrier dealers here in the state of Alabama. Again, if you got a need for a new unit, you need to call on them and make sure you take advantage of their huge discount they're giving here to start 2025. Several $1,000s off a new carrier unit if you qualify. So you need to make sure you reach out to them. Now's the perfect time to do it. And Scout Program Management, a full-service construction management firm up in Birmingham, Alabama, that will lead you from the pre-construction phase and the planning of your project through the entire project to the end to when they turn the keys over. They are the liaison between you and the builder. and the developer. So they handle all the things that you don't know how to handle. You don't want to jump off in a project and get in over your head. So hire Scout Program Management for your next. And they deal mainly in education development and education construction projects. I know they're working on the school here in Alexander City at Benjamin Russell, the brand new high school that'll be open in 2026. That project's coming along great. They've got a huge athletic complex that they're going to be working with over in Lee County for Lee County schools. So it's going to be awesome. They're doing a lot of great work around the state. Bunkers as well, Lee Apparel and Sign Source. We can't thank them enough. Faith, what you got planned this weekend?
Nothing right now. I think I'm just gonna chill.
That's nothing better, right?
Mm,
Literally chill as the
literally
temperature
chill.
drops. So
I'm scared to walk outside. I know Lucy's about to want to go out, and
yep.
I'm gonna have to lay her up. It's
Yep.
gonna be cold. It was
It's
nice yesterday.
Actually, it's going to feel like spring break today compared to what's coming next week. So
Good. Yeah, it was
get
nice.
out and take advantage of it. So,
No
well,
kidding.
Faith, thank you so much. We will see you back next week. I got a reminder. We will be off through Tuesday of next week. So we'll be back with you next Wednesday for the Auburn Blitz podcast. We'll have the Auburn Blitz show coming up at noon. Jason Caldwell will be on from Auburn Undercover, as he always is. And then we've got Coach Pearl coming in with us next week on the show. So we're excited about that as well. So we'll talk more about that as we go. And as we just heard from Matt on the show, Game Day did announce they're going to be in Auburn next Saturday, Faith. So that's going to be a lot of fun as Tennessee comes to town. Well, Faith, have a great weekend. Glad to have you on board Auburn Blitz. We're excited. And we will see everybody next Wednesday. Everybody have a great extended weekend, okay?
Bye.